It's good to be here. We're treading new territory. It's been 4 years. And we're going to have a fourth minister one of these days. But in the meantime, we're going to be faithful, keep moving, and looking toward the future. We've trusted God in the years before. He's been here. He's blessed this church, and there's no reason why we'll continue. It means we're all going to have to gear up, fire up, get ready, and do our part. And when asked to help, do it. And that's why I'm here today. They borrowed me from Milford. Of course, Milford borrowed me from here. Now, I'm all confused. I wasn't sure which church I ought to go to this morning, so I'll preach this Sunday, of course, and then the second Sunday in November here. And then the rest of the time I'll be swapping back and forth with Milford with a few people. So I wanted to speak this morning about from made in the shade to withering in the wind. Kind of weird. A sermon about a man by the name of Jonah. I love the story of Jonah. There's 4 chapters. I think that's why I like it. There's only 4 chapters. It's a quick book. You can read it in one setting. And it's a lot of lessons for us. So I wanted to ask you a question as we begin this morning. What makes you mad? I mean, think about it. What makes you mad? Your team lost. Well, mine didn't. Oh, that's another story. But your first dent in the new car? Oh. All right. A stain on your new carpet? A tear in your new clothes? Sibling wearing your clothes that you paid with your money? My brother used to hate that. I always tried his clothes on at school. We were in different schools. I was in junior high. He was in high school. He didn't know until we got home, you know. Your brother buying a new house and he owes you money. And you went, does that make you mad? A neighbor making the same amount of money as you, pulling in with a new car in the drive. Does that make you mad? You know, he's going to show up. I want to take about 3 seconds and tell your neighbor what makes you mad. Go ahead. What makes you mad? Jim, tell Carol. I'm sure you've been watching. All right, tell your neighbor. That makes me mad. All right, I'm giving you some time to speak during the sermon, so tell your neighbor. All right, Larry, work on this, Cindy. What makes you mad? No. All right, yeah, we're going to set up a marriage counseling booth. All right. I heard somebody say, a long sermon will get ready. Now, if I'd written the book of Jonah, and thank the Lord I didn't, I would have ended the whole book at chapter 3, the end. It would be easy that way. I wouldn't even have put chapter 4 in, but that's where our text takes us this morning. It's the strangest ending to any book in the Bible. And so I'm going to put some specs on when I read my NIV here. Jonah 4. I don't know if it's going to be behind me, but if it is, here we go. But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. Here's some issues. He prayed to the Lord. Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? That's what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew you were a gracious and a compassionate God. I knew it. You're slow to anger. You're abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. And now, Lord, you might as well take away my life. It's better for me to die than to live. And the Lord replied, is it right for you to be angry? Jonah had gone out and sat down at the place east of the city. There he made himself a shelter. He sat in its shade, and he waited to see what would happen to the city. Then the Lord God provided a leafy plant, made it grow up over Jonah to give him shade for his head to ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy about that plant. But at dawn the next day, God provided a worm which chewed the plant so that it withered. And when the sun rose, God provided a scorching east wind, and the sun blazed on Jonah's head so that he grew faint. He wanted to die. And he said, it'd be better for me to die than to live. But God said to Jonah, is it right for you to be angry about the plant? It is. And I'm angry, so angry I wish I were dead. But the Lord said, you have been concerned so much about this plant. Though you did not tend it, you didn't make it grow, it sprang up overnight, and it dried overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, and also many animals? What an ending to a book. How strange can you get? Jonah goes from made in the shade to withering in the wind. And maybe you might find yourself in that same situation as we go through here. The book of Jonah, maybe a synopsis here, is the constant theme is how God would decide to control his prophet Jonah. God could control everything but Jonah, it seems. God in chapter 1 controlled the heathen sailors. In chapter 2, he controlled the great fish. In chapter 3, he controlled an entire city. But by the end of the book, God is still working on Jonah, this obstinate prophet he is, working on his compassion and his attitude. The whole book is connected and is a contest between Jehovah and Jonah. Chapter 1, Jonah's running from God on the boat to Tarshish. Chapter 2, he's running to God as he prays in the bottom of a fish. Chapter 3, he's running for God. He's going to the city of Nineveh. But in chapter 4, which is our text we just read, he's running into God. Wow. So our sermon this morning is from made in the shade to withering in the wind. And Jonah's substitute teacher for the day is none other than Professor Worm. I was going to have the children's program, I was going to have some gummy worms, and then I thought, well, if I did that for them, you'd want one too, and I couldn't afford all that. So I'm going to look at 4 things this morning about Jonah, about his passion, his prayer, his probing, and his purpose. So let's look first of all at the passion of Jonah. Karina Chow, we've got a big place down in Milford. Karina Chow has their new theme, Your Pet, Our Passion. Well, I'm real happy for that, They're all excited about my pet, Unfortunately, I don't have one, but at least they have a passion, It's like White Castle. It's what you crave. I like that. I'm living proof of that. In fact, we drive to Michigan City just for a lunch tour. And then they have a Skyline Chili in Fort Wayne, and we drove there for a lunch tour. I look at, don't I? Okay. The first thing we look at here is the passion of Jonah in verse 1. Unfortunately, the passion that he has is not for the souls of this great city. It's a passion of anger. Do you harbor anger? Are you married to someone that has some anger issues? Do you have an ex with an anger? Are you an anger person, What would justify the anger of Jonah? God had just caused the greatest revival in history that ever happened. 600,000 people came to know Jehovah God as their God. Put on sackcloth and worship God in the city of Nineveh. The whole town from the king on down. Everyone repented, and Jonah was the messenger by God. If you had a successful revival like that, wouldn't you be on top of the world? No, not Jonah. He got angry. Why would this guy get angry? I have a fill in the blank, I think. Anger means to boil or to burn, and Jonah was hot with passion, but it wasn't for souls. Then what was it for? My son-in-law Conan, just a couple years ago when we got back here, was using a carpet cleaning truck, borrowing it from my son who owns it, and put too much pressure on the hoses, and it blew up in his face, and arm, shoulder. And it was just, it scalded him. And we took him to Elkhart Hospital in the van. Once we found him on the ground, he wasn't moving well, and he called Dan. We went, and Elkhart did all they said, but you've got to go to a burn unit. Well, the nearest one's Fort Wayne. Didn't have time really to hook up an ambulance, and there was some insurance issues. And he said, let's just get in the car. And he's all bandaged up. We pulled into the burn unit in Fort Wayne. I might have sped a little too much down US 30 going, I felt like an ambulance in his van, And when he walked in, now they bandaged him as much as they could on his shoulder, his back, his arm, and some of his neck. And as he walks in, that burn unit lobby kind of cleared out. He looked like a mummy, had gauze sticking here and there. Man, you want to get service, just dress like a mummy when you walk into the burn unit. Man, they wheeled him through, and we got to the front of the line in no time. Jonah was scalded with anger because God saved 600,000 people. What's wrong with you, dude? What's going on? Why? Because God made him look bad? He preached that in 40 days, this place is going to blow up. But it didn't. Was it because he was trying to save face for God? Because God reneged on the deal? What's going on here? Neither. Jonah was sinfully mad. He didn't want the Assyrians to experience God's grace. He thought he was the only one who deserved it. And he really didn't want to share it with people that he hated. He wanted God to deal as harshly with them as God had dealt with him down at the bottom of that fish, you know. Now we need to know some history about the city of Nineveh. It says it was a great city. It took 3 days to walk through it. People scoffed at that in the Bible. There's no evidence of a city that big. Archaeologists discovered the ruins, though, of Nineveh. And this is what they discovered. They found that the central downtown of the city of Nineveh, as they dug, it was 1 mile by 2.5 miles. That's a big town. More than one stoplight. The entire population was surrounded by a 60-mile wall. Now think of that, 60 miles of a wall around the city. There were 1,500 towers. I did some math, I don't know if it's right, but there was a tower every 4.5 miles around the city. And the tower, the wall was 100 feet tall, but the towers were 200 feet tall. I don't know about you, but how did they do that? Can you imagine? That's 3 or 4 zip codes right there. That's 2 or 3 area codes. And in 1843, they made a discovery. The critics had said that the Assyrian king Sargon that's mentioned in Isaiah 20. He never lived. He never, that's just a fairy tale. And all of a sudden, when they dug up the wall that surrounded Nineveh, they sent the bricks back home, and as they tested the bricks to see how old they were, on the back of every brick was inscribed the word Sargon. Isn't that amazing? The more you dig, the more the Bible's true. But it was great in souls. 120,000 people who can't tell their right hand from their right, right from left. Sounds like, well, that was kind of ignorant people. No. That's babies. That's the expression they use for children who could not even tell their left hand from their right hand. Can you imagine that many babies? Wow, 120,000? The old BGYN business, Dr. Van Karen would have had a blast. They'd get busy for years, Toys R Us wouldn't be bust if that happened here, Little chariot strollers for all those babies who were selling like cupcakes. Just think of it. And so conservative estimates say there was 600,000 adults probably with 120,000 babies. Who knows? But it was a big city. But everything was big about Nineveh, including their sin. And Jonah was the dude to confront that. The history tells us that the Assyrians skinned their captives alive. They pulled out their tongues, they gouged out their eyes, mutilated entire cities by driving over the population with chariots with scythes on the wheels, just cutting and dicing. All kinds of atrocities to create fear and submission among their subjects. They engaged in every sort of unspeakable physical cruelty and terror imagined. No wonder Jonah. I guess if there's anything, I feel sorry for him right now, but he was told to go. Have you ever been intimidated? Just a couple weeks ago, I was intimidated. One of our empty houses in Elkhart was, I go by to check, and the back door was open. There's a car in the drive. It's been boarded up for a while, so I thought I'd go in. I said, I'll let you stay in the truck here in the drive, and I'm going to go in. I went into the back door, said, is anybody home? And this guy, 300 pounds if he was an ounce, comes around the kitchen corner and has me cornered in the kitchen airlock lobby back porch area, all right? I'm cornered. He had a little buddy with him. He said, yeah, I'm here. I'm home. This is my house. I just got out of prison. And this is my house. I say he had long blonde hair, lipstick, the reddest lipstick you'd ever see, a bustier of some kind. And he had his little toy boy with him. And they were setting up shop, spray painting the inside of the windows. All right? So I went to the police station. I backed out of there. My wife actually got sick, just thinking about it. I said, let's step outside, boys. And we did, so I had some room. I was intimidated. I thought, why don't I have a permit to carry right about then, So I had a permit to run, that's about it. So I kept backing up until I was outside and found out he just got out of prison. 4 years. Where? Out of state. What's it to you? All right? Yeah. So I went down to the police station and took a few things. We couldn't catch him there, so we finally, after 3 times, the cops came and surrounded the house, 4 squad cars, and they had guns drawn. We went room by room through there. And I appreciate the Elkhart police having my front, not my back, because I was going forward for any. And they searched the house. They found an automatic weapon, a rifle box up in one of the rooms up there. So there's no telling what was going on or what would have, he had just kind of come around. And so, they're ready to, they would have arrested him if he didn't vacate. Haven't seen him since, although the door's broken in again, but man, I was intimidated. That's a long story to tell you that Jonah was afraid. Think about it. Yeah. But it was Jonah who needed to convert his passion from anger to caring for lost souls. And he couldn't make that transition in his life. And a lot of Christians can't make that transition from their anger and their passion to the fact that there are people. It's a heart issue, and that's what we're dealing with this morning. Well, let's look at the prayer of Jonah. I need to keep moving in our story here. What about the prayer of Jonah, verse 2 and 3? This is the weirdest prayer. This is the second prayer you have in the book of Jonah. First prayer is when he was at the bottom of the ocean, inside a fish, a great fish, it says. That was his first prayer. And it was a prayer of confession and repentance, and it was offered in that dark cavern of a fish. But now he offers one of the strangest prayers. Let's look at a couple things. His confession, all right? Jonah's theology is great here. He's got a perfect understanding about God and his nature. His reasoning for not going to Nineveh is centered around 5 basic truths. Jonah knew about God, he just couldn't wrap his theology around his anger and his hatred for a certain kind of people. He knew God well enough that if those people repented, that God has the ability and desire to forgive. And he was angry at God's compassion for all those people. Who knows, maybe it was a relative of his that was taken captive. I found that you can have all the right theology in the world, but you can have a totally wrong heart. And you can win a lot of arguments, but you won't win any people to Jesus. 5 great truths about, look at this, verse 2. I love this. He's got it right. This would be a great sermon series right here. 5 truths. You are a gracious God. You're compassionate. You're slow to anger. You're abounding in love. You relent from calamity. That's his confession. He knew it all. He just couldn't put it into his life. Maybe you're here and you got a PhD in church, but it hasn't translated into what happens Monday morning or in your family this afternoon. Oh, you know what God wants. It just hasn't been implanted in your heart to do it. And then look at his complaint. His confession, his complaint. Verse 3. Therefore now, O Lord, since you're so awesome, and you're all 5 of these things I just said, since you're that, O Lord, take my life. It's better for me to die than to live. That's an overwhelming prayer, don't you think? God, you're so good, I might as well just die. Students of human behavior have noted that there's a definite relationship between the hatred for others and pity for oneself. This complaining, whining prayer sounds like Elijah's prayer in the Old Testament. You remember Elijah when Jezebel was after him, the queen? And in verse 3 of chapter 19 of 1 Kings, Elijah was afraid for his life. And verse 4, he sat under a broom tree and he prayed that he would die. Listen to this pity party. I've had enough, Lord. Take my life. I know better than my ancestors. There's a wanted poster out for me by Queen Jezebel. I added that extra piece right there. Wow. Jonah's problem is what I call a spiritual myopia. All he could see was himself in this spiritual journey on which he's at. All he could think about was what was best for him. He was consumed and focused with the sun, the moon, the stars, everything, and God revolved around him. Christians can be good at self-centeredness too. Well, what's in it for me at the church? Oh, I'm shopping around. I'm shopping. That's a New Testament concept I've never heard of. Oh yeah, we're looking, we're doing that, you know. Well, what's that all about? What's here for me? It's a consumer mentality that has infiltrated our churches. I go where I want, when I want, if I like it, if I don't like it. I come and go as I please. I'm not attached, no commitment. Sounds great, doesn't it? Except it's not in the Scripture. And so this important focus is we get our needs met in life only by meeting the needs of other people. And Jonah wasn't there. Jonah would get over his hatred for the Assyrians only by serving the Assyrians. Well, let's look at the probing, okay, of Jonah. What do you mean, the probing? It sounds like, we have to do some exploratory surgery on you. Oh, no, not me. Well, we're going to do it on Jonah here, all right? God's going to work him over. It's final exam day here in this story, and there's no sermon, no rebuke, no argument. There's only one question. Ever go into a classroom and the professor says, you know, this is an education class, and I want you to write everything you know about Christian education. Oh, boy. You know, it's so wide open. It's one question, and it's pass or fail. Here's Jonah's pass or fail question. Verse 4. Jonah, do you have a right to be angry? Pass or fail? One question. And he couldn't pass the test. The Lord's attitude toward Jonah was the same long-suffering attitude that he demonstrated to the city. The question was to restore back this backslidden prophet to a proper compassion for people. And my question for you is, how much do you love other people? Oh, I love them all. I want you to love one this week and bring that person with you next Sunday. I'm not asking you to love everybody, just one. You don't have to have a 600,000 people revival, just one. Jonah didn't say a word, of course, just like you didn't say a word when I mentioned this. He was so mad at God, he wouldn't even respond. Instead, Jonah went to a deeper self-pity, and he staged a sit-down protest, a demonstration rally outside the city. He went up onto the hillside. Here's his protest, verse 5. What does it say in verse 5? Oh my. Jonah had gone out and he sat down at a place east of the city, and he made himself a shelter, and he sat in its shade, and he waited to see what would happen to the city. Are you sitting waiting to see what's going to happen to 600,000 people who are lost? Yeah. I did my part. If God blows them away, it's okay with me. Can you understand the heart of this man? Does God need to do heart surgery on you and me this morning? Yeah, I know we need to go to church. They need a Savior. It's a probing final exam. It's one that we are about to take also. Jonah didn't say another word because he wasn't speaking to God anymore. He's having his pity party up there. And so he's got this great protest going on. And the whole book is about God trying to get to the heart of Jonah. And do you know something? I think that's the whole purpose of the book for us. We don't have a head knowledge problem of bringing people to Jesus. We have a heart problem. And God was going to somehow have to teach him another lesson. He's tried to boat, he's tried to storm, he's tried to fish, so now he's going to try a plant. And you big baby of a prophet, Jonah, whining in your protest. And verse 6 talks about a preservation here, okay? Let's go real quick through this, all right? Verse 6. Then the Lord God provided a leafy plant and made it grow to give shade, ease his discomfort. I think this church could be a place of shade, place of shelter. And we got it made in the shade. But really we're withering on the vine if we stay in the shade. The gourd, the vine, grew miraculously, And it says in the Bible, it made Jonah very grateful. That's the first time in the book he's grateful for something. Isn't that amazing, all right? And it's all because he had shade. He wasn't grateful that 600 people came to know God. But he was grateful for one little plant, one leaf, a shade, a vine, a gourd, a leafy plant, one translation says. And God then is going to teach him the gourd. He's going to teach him about with a worm in verse 7. And then he brings an east wind in verse 8 because his heart has not changed. And I'm wondering if there are things that God brings into our lives because our hearts are too hard. Would you be on the alert for a wind, for a leaf, for an east wind, a vine, and even a worm? It just might be God speaking to you to get out from under the shade and show compassion to the innocent. Your gourd, your vine, your worm, your east wind could be your 401k, your house, your retirement, your parent, your child, but all that stuff can die on the vine in just a matter of a day. If you have it right now, enjoy it, but don't make it the focus of your life. Because it's here today and it's gone tomorrow. And then his pouting, verse 9. He still hasn't learned the lesson here. All right, let's go on. Isn't this a great story? But God said to Jonah, is it right for you to be angry about the plant? Well, it is. You know, it's interesting about his pouting here. He got mad, then he got glad, then now he's mad again. What a yo-yo. You know, but at least now he's talking to God. He's not just protesting, he's speaking back to God. And Jonah's answer forms this tight fist in the face of God. And he says that the problem right from the beginning, God, is I knew all about you, but I really didn't know you. Through all his years of ministry, he had failed to recognize how God's love could even reach. I know God loves me, but how can he love my neighbor next door? Do you know what he's done to me? Do you know what he does? How can he be loved? The same as me? I'm going to be in heaven with him? The math doesn't add up, you see. Wow. And then his pity, of course, verse 10 and 11, he's up there on the hillside. Here was a single gourd, a plant, but God is saying there's thousands of people. The plant lives only one day, but the souls of men and women and boys and girls in that great city, those souls last for all eternity. And you're having a pity party because you lost a plant. And God says, I don't want to lose people. Isn't that a great story about God? As evil as this nation might have been, he loves people. Even when they're unlovable. And isn't that good? Because I was unlovable. And he still loved me. Oh, I didn't do all that stuff. But he still loves me. Wow. Jonah's value scale was so unbalanced, his vision so nearsighted, his life so small. In fact, God says something that's the most remarkable thing in all the Bible. He says, in verse 11, look at that. I care about people and many cattle as well. Huh? He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Cattle too? He's trying to teach Jonah a lesson that he cares about everything, all his creation. He not only knows the number of hairs on my head, he also knows the name of my Ninevite's neighbor's cat. And he cares about it. Can you fathom a God that great? That can know all that and still love me in spite of it all? And my cattle? I wonder if God doesn't want to break our hearts sometimes of the things that we're enamored about, so excited about. Oh, RK1! We wrap our arms around things that we save for, we live for, we die with our things. While all around us are people who need Jesus Christ. We're so full of pouting that we have no room for pity. So proud of ourselves, we have put salvation on the shelf. Well, let's real quickly, we got to end the sermon. So we've had the passion of Jonah. We've had the prayer of Jonah. We've had the probing of Jonah. Now the purpose. Why? What's the purpose of Jonah? Well, I might not say anything new right here, but it's all the same. The book of Jonah ends with no conclusion. I hate that. I want the good guy to win. I want the conclusion there in the book. You read a novel, 500 pages, there's no answer. But the final question is left like a rhetorical question. It trails off into oblivion. Jonah, is it right for you to have